sclerosis. I've been diagnosed now for, I don't know, 15 to 20 years. I'm willing to answer any questions you want to ask, and if I don't want to answer you, then I just won't. I work with Murray through Boost, and mind you, at the moment it's all pretty quiet. But yeah, just fire ahead and ask me any questions you need to, and I'll tell you as honestly as what I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Alistair.
Hi everyone, I'm Al. I am originally from Ireland. I've lived in New Zealand almost 19 years. 4 or 5 years ago, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. Thank goodness it was benign and not cancerous, but it still caused a lot of havoc in my head because that's where it lives. And it caused me to have 4 autoimmune diseases. So it's all surrounding hormones and hormones I don't produce, essentially. The main, more serious one being adrenaline, or the cortisol. So there's a lot of things that happen, but it causes me to be very tired. And it was in my head, as between my optic nerves. So I've lost 20% peripheral vision. My hands are weak. I've gained a lot of weight. Things like that, I suppose. But I've really found being in the time bank being really, really useful. And yeah, if there's anything more you want to know, let me know, I suppose.
Thank you, Alistair. Okay, great. Now we are very fortunate to have someone joining us all the way from the United States tonight. Well, it's tonight our time. Destin, welcome. Let's hear about you. And what time is it where you are?
It is 12 a.m. in the morning. So yeah, I'm up late, but that's something common for me. I'm Destin. I have a chronic pain disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and POTS. And I also have something called dissociative identity disorder. So I am a multiple person. I am like an alter in a system of alters, and I have a lot of amnesia. So yeah, this is going to be interesting. Let me know if you guys want to know anything more about me, and I'll try to answer to the best of my ability.
Thanks, Destin. Great. And Simon.
Yeah, hi everyone. Simon. I'm from Dunedin in New Zealand, and my wife is here too, Nagisa, and she might have some comments later on helping with someone with a disability. So I've had Parkinson's for probably early symptoms were about 7 or 8 years ago, which started with just general lack of energy and then shaking hands. And I didn't click at all that it could be anything like Parkinson's until about 3 years ago, where I got diagnosed by a neurologist. And I didn't believe it at the time, but I respond to medication, so that's what it is. And so, as the other panelists said, I'm very happy to answer any questions about what it is and how it affects everyday life. A lot of people don't know even really what Parkinson's is or what kind of disability it is. So, yeah, there we go.
Thank you, Simon, and thank you, Nagisa, for being on the call and offering your thoughts as well. We will definitely be interested in hearing. How about we stay with you then, Simon, and perhaps you could tell us a little bit about what has changed for you, what having Parkinson's, I mean, that might tell us a little bit about the disease, if you can tell us how it's changed your life or impacts your life.
Sure. So I was a very energetic, adventurous guy. Well, I would still like to be. Traveling a lot, cycling, doing marathons, playing a lot of music, piano, guitar, drums. And basically all of those things I can't really do anymore, at least to the extent that I was doing them, because Parkinson's really slows you down. Sort of for most people with Parkinson's, there's 3 major symptoms. One is that you have quite slow movements, and the second one is that you start to be very rigid, and you see people with Parkinson's, their face is often not very expressive. All of the muscles tend to kind of freeze up around the body over a period of years and decades. And then, of course, you'll see people with tremors, their hands will shake a bit like this, which was one of my earlier symptoms. So I find it very hard to walk without medication. To do simple tasks like even doing up a zipper, washing the dishes, peeling vegetables, things like that are quite tricky sometimes. And of course, playing the piano, playing the guitar, my fingers go very slowly now, so that's a bit of a challenge.
Wow, thank you, Simon. I think what we'll do is, if people do have questions as things come up, feel free to type them in the chat, and then we can take them, and before you forget them. So feel free to put your question in the chat. And what about Destin? The things that you have, has that been something that's been with you always, or have you developed an illness or a condition that's changed things for you?
Yeah, so mine has actually gotten progressively worse throughout my life. With Ehlers-Danlos, it's a kind of genetic thing. I have had, it's basically like full body arthritis my entire life, and it can also cause extreme like hyperflexibility in your joints. And basically your joints will dislocate on their own, and cause severe pain and often like injuries to the body, just repeatedly, just over and over and over. And it's something that I kind of have grown to live with. So I didn't even know that this stuff was happening to me. I didn't even know I was having any of these problems. I thought that, oh, my bones just hurt today. It's just one of those days. Because I think if you grow up with something like this, you just kind of get used to a certain amount of pain, and you don't even know that it's not normal. And that's something interesting about that. But with the DID, it's something I didn't know that I had my entire life.
And just remind us what the DID was again.
Yeah, that is something called dissociative identity disorder, otherwise known as multiple personality disorder. So that is something that a lot of people don't know, but 30 years ago, it was changed from multiple personality disorder to dissociative identity disorder, because it is a dissociative disorder that is developed through basically complex post-traumatic stress disorder. It's basically on the farthest end of trauma that you can have. And that is something that I didn't know that I had until a couple months ago. And it's been really interesting adjusting to life, knowing that I'm not necessarily full in my own body, if that makes sense.
Okay. And so what has that recent diagnosis kind of changed for you? Has it helped you to accept things that are going on more, or what?
Yeah, so it's definitely helped me just kind of like understand my emotions better. It's helped me understand myself better. And really the only way that I was able to find out about it was like researching by myself and really advocating for myself. And it's helped me a lot in that case of teaching me how to advocate for myself and teaching me how to make sure that I tell the doctors everything that is going on, because even the littlest things like, oh, I forgot what I had for breakfast this morning, and I realized, oh, I forget what I have for breakfast every morning. That's not necessarily normal,
Right.
especially if it's, that's not something that I would have think of, oh, that's not normal, but yeah.
Thank you. Donna, would you like to share with us what's changed for you since developing MS?
Yep. Everything, I suppose. I was working in a preschool. I got to a stage where I was falling a lot and becoming a risk around the little children. So I sort of resigned, but it was either resign or be pushed out anyway. So then, yeah, my relationship split up, mind you, what a weak man he was. And so like my children have just sort of grown up with it. They're very, very protective and very defensive of me. It's been hard getting used to, you know, every day it's a trial. It's something different that you've got to face. You know, some days you start the day frustrated because it's like it's just not working properly, and that's annoying. And there's some days that you just have meltdowns because it's just so frustrating and so annoying that you can't do things that you used to do. Although I'm starting to develop more things that I can do, and I can do them well now, you know, like I've been given a wheelchair, thank goodness for the government and the support that they put in. So they've given me a automatic power chair which raises myself up, lowers me down, so I can put the washing out in the line. I can sit at the bench and peel the spuds and do all sorts of things. So yeah, there's not well, I can't go running, I can't go walking, I can't do all of those sorts of things, but you know, it's all just trial and error, and you just have to sort of try and get through it. But I do tend to use the services that are available to me as far as wheelchair taxis, wheelchair parking, you know, things like that. And I encourage anybody that's diagnosed with a illness or a disability to source everything that they possibly can, because it's all out there for us to use if we need it.
Thanks, Donna. Can you tell us, for those maybe who aren't so familiar with MS, a little bit about it?
Oh, okay. Yeah, MS, it's a neurological condition similar to Parkinson's, actually. Those two diseases hold hands together, really. A lot of it starts in many different ways, and I think there's 4 different types of MS. So I was diagnosed with one of the earlier types that was just caused me to be blind in one eye. That was scary. I thought it was a brain tumour, but it was pretty good news when they told me it was MS, because I thought, okay, I don't have a brain tumour, that's got to be good. And then it just sort of carried on. It's got a lot worse over the last 5 years. I've gone from being somebody that went to the gym daily and worked full time and did everything that I wanted to do when I wanted to do it, to now being somebody that sits back and has to sit back and wait. Wait to be picked up, to be taken to pick up something from the shop or get my groceries delivered, which is great. Yeah, it's affected everything in my life, really, but it's taught me to be patient and to be a lot more accepting of other people's needs as well.
Interesting. So are you, do you use a wheelchair most of the time?
Full time, yeah.
Full time, okay, yeah. And how long has that been? Because it does take sort of get worse, doesn't it, the MS? So it
does, yes, yeah, Kate, it does. It's you know, it started off, I was fine right up until possibly about a year ago. I ended up in hospital because I got mass infections and things. I came right from that, but while I was recovering from that, I was starting to lose my ability to walk and yeah, all of those things. So I've been on a walking frame for a couple of years now. I've always had a wheelchair reasonably handy, just in case. But then I've got given this electric chair, and it's been actually the making of me. It's almost given me back what I thought I'd lost, you know, as far as independence goes. I had to give up driving, which was really sad. But you just have to get used to that sort of thing, because you can't change the way things are. You just have to learn how to cope with them as anybody else does with different conditions.
Yeah. Thank you, Donna. Alistair, I'll ask you. Did I ask you already? No. What has the brain tumour changed for you? I know it's changed a lot.
Well, yeah, the brain tumour's changed everything. I sort of lost my job overnight, or lost the ability to work overnight. and gained a lot of things that were very perturbing and needed understanding. And the doctor sort of explained to me that I need to carry some pills and an injection with me everywhere I went, because if I got into a car accident or if I broke my leg or whatever, I'd have to inject myself within 30 minutes or I would be dead. So it's something that you really learn to live with. I take it very seriously, but I don't think about it now, if you know what I mean. It's just my backpack comes everywhere with me, and I take my cortisol pills in the morning, and I just, when I walk, I sound like that. So yeah, and like I can see with Donna and Simon and most likely Destin and a lot of the people I know who have similar things, attitude is massive. You know, like it seems like Donna's got an amazing attitude, and also Simon and Destin, because unfortunately we have these things, and we can choose to accept them is difficult, but if we choose to accept them and do the best we can, have the best life we can, then it's a lot easier. But everything, obviously, I'm not making us all the same. I'm sure everything's much more complicated for everybody. But I've been involved with some people through the hospice in Ashburton here, and it's amazing. I know one lady who has had MS, I think it is, for 20, 30 years. And, you know, she's amazing. She's in a wheelchair. She's more advanced than you, Donna, but even the time that you've had it, you know, you seem to be coping really, really well with it. And, you know, in reality, we don't really have a choice. So I can still drive. Energy is probably one of my biggest issues. I have to rest a lot. I have to plan my day around the amount of energy I have to try and, you know, get what I want to get done. I really enjoy cooking, so I do most of the cooking in the house. I'll get up at whatever time. I'm really lucky to be able to get massage. That helps me an awful lot. Helps me to relax and therefore be able to do more things. And then I'll take a nap during the day, and I'll get up and start prepping dinner about 3, and then maybe go for another rest, and then just work things in. And, you know, if I've got something coming up that I know about, I'll take 3 days really good rest if it's something I got to go and spend half a day at. So yeah. And the other things, I suppose, my wrists, I have orthotic guards that just keep my wrists straight if I'm doing heavy work and things like that. I've been able to get into some cycling recently, which has been massive. I don't know why. I know I was able to do nothing during lockdown, so maybe the energy from being able to do nothing at all helped me to do a bit of cycling. But that's really helped me, and knowing, you know, working out what foods to eat, what foods work well with my body, what works don't, which ones cause inflammation, because I do get a lot of inflammation. And, you know, I'm really winning today because I can get my watch on the 5th strap. So anything above 3 is a bonus. But yeah, and, you know, it's all about learning as you go along and monitoring. And sometimes there's no rhyme or reason, but you can still say, well, this thing is helping me to whatever. So.
And Alistair, you talked about having a positive attitude, which is very admirable for you and the others. But how was it in the beginning? Are you able to share how it was when this quite devastating blow sort of happened, when you lost your career and the life as you knew it?
I went through the 7 stages of grief, even though I didn't even know what they were at the time. I remember being, you know, after, I'm a super positive person. I mean, that's been a blessing that I've been born with. I had to sort of choose to go that way at the end, but I was, yeah, very suicidal. At the beginning, I was like writing the world on fire. It's like, well, I'll just do this, I'll do that. We'll quit my job, move to Ashburton, we'll move here. My wife had just got my job in Ashburton. We'll do this, we'll do that. And then I wasn't able to quit my job. We didn't know what my diagnosis long-term was going to be for another 2 months. So I was diagnosed on the 15th of November, and everything shut down over Christmas, and I didn't know what size it was going to be, what treatment I was going to be on. Were they going to replace my hormones? Because they had to wait until see if the hormones, some of them came back naturally, so they put me enough of a dose of the replacement hormones to keep me alive. And I was really sick. I was just really, really, really ill. Very low blood pressure, always vomiting, other nasty things. And eventually we did get back in, I think on the 14th of January, and they said, look, this is how your life's going to look a little bit. And so I was able to resign from my job, and we were living out on a farm in Horarata, and I was confined to the house, and I could see my staff and everything happening around me and me not able to help them. So it was basically like a torture chamber. And I went completely and utterly loopy. Like, I don't know how my wife managed to stay with me, but I accused everybody of everything you could possibly accuse. And I remember sitting at the table one day, and you know, if the boss came around, who wasn't being very nice to me at the time, the farm owner, I'd like run from the table and get under the sheets in my bed. I'm like, and then I said to my wife something like, am I paranoid or something? And it's like, well, really, obviously you are. But to me, it didn't, you know, it was an out of body experience. So over a couple of years, I was really lucky. I had some insurance, and my insurance company paid for a really good counsel in Christchurch. And once I moved to Ashburton and found, you know, he counseled me through acceptance, and he counseled me, he asked me what sort of things I enjoyed doing before my tumor. And over the 6 sessions, he basically showed me ways that I could still do some of those things. Okay, they weren't the same, but and I slowly got better, and they slowly increased the hormones because none of them came back. And they've got me on a pretty good brew now, if you want to call it that. And they keep sort of monitoring me very closely. My tumor's half the size of what it was. Probably won't go down to, it was the size of a golf ball. Probably won't go down to any less than what it is. Yeah, I couldn't ask for better. I've been super, super lucky to have met the people I've met through the TimeBank, and the people I've met here in Ashburton. And they've given me the life that I now have. My life expectancy is normal, thank goodness. It was really interesting to hear Donna say that, you know, thank goodness it wasn't a brain tumor. I was probably feeling the opposite way. Thank goodness it wasn't. Goodness me, what you guys have, though, I love you. But yeah, so I feel really lucky. I've got good friends. I've got a wonderful wife who stayed through, you know, with me all the way through. And yeah, I can also contribute by being in the TimeBank. And it gives me a sense of belonging, because, you know, normally you don't really think about it, but you got your workmates and you got your work dues and you got your camaraderie, whereas if you don't have a job, you don't sort of have that. So we miss those types of things. But I've got a new family, which is sort of Ashburton TimeBank and my friends here. So yeah.
So if I was to ask the panelists what is most difficult for you, and also what helps you to cope, if you want to address both of those questions, and then we'll take some from the chat. So what's most difficult and what helps you cope? So I guess, Alistair, we'll just stay with you. You've mentioned the TimeBank has helped you to cope in a way, because...
You know, I've always been a people person, so being able to do things, and I can now, even with lockdown and that, you know, I can join people via Zoom, and Zoom has really helped me, or whatever platform we decide to use in the future. It's helped me to be a part of something, because there have been things in the past that I haven't been able to go to because I just didn't have the energy. But if I just have to sit here in a chair, I can take some Panadol and carry on. I probably forgot to say that I have, as a result of my pain system, my pain management system sort of going into alert mode all the time, I have what's called myofascial pain syndrome. So it basically doesn't know to shut off. So I'm on nerve blockers and things like that, and I am in a lot of pain. Sounds a little similar to what Destin has, but obviously very different at the same time. And it's just getting used to doing things that work. I mean, the exercise really, really helps if I can do it. And the hardest thing, like I said, is not being able to take part. That's the hardest thing for me. I'm a super people person, so if I don't get people within, you know, 2 or 3 days, I'm just like a angry idiot. So I'm not very happy to be around, or yeah. And you know, I think one of the hardest things for people such as ourselves is that people tend to see us at our best, and it's only us or our wives, our husbands, our partners that see us at our worst. So people sort of think, oh, you know, he's fine. I mean, I'm overweight, but people think, oh, well, if he lost a bit of weight, he'd be fine, you know. But there's so much more than that. I applied, or I wanted to apply for potentially getting a disabled parking badge, you know. and my doctor heavily discouraged me because he said, because you look so normal, if you park in one of those places, people will have a go at you. And I don't need it, so I haven't bothered about it too much. But it's those types of things where people think, oh, well, you look normal, what's your problem, So those are the things that we face out in the public, I suppose. So, yeah.
That's really interesting. Thanks, Alistair. Simon, what about you? What has been most difficult since you've developed Parkinson's, and what's helped you to cope?
Right, so as I touched on before, initially it was not being able to do the things I love to do, hobbies and sports and things. And I gradually got used to that and took up some other hobbies and things. For example, tuning pianos is something I started getting into. And that I can manage to do, work on a piano for a couple of hours before my wrists and fingers get too tense. What else? Just more time, I guess, on the computer learning software, as I was a software developer before. So, what I find difficult mentally is sometimes losing train of thought as I'm speaking, and there's sort of memory issues that crop up now and then. And my wife can attest to that. I sometimes forget things she's told me just half an hour before, or certainly a few days before. And she's constantly surprised that I can't remember what something really obvious. So that's difficult for both of us, I think. But we're both getting used to these sort of things, and it's a part of the condition. It's not something I can do much about, because it's actually manage to reverse it, but that's another topic.
Sorry, I don't know if everybody had Simon going funny there, or if it was just my computer. Oh, you did. Okay. Sorry, we missed the last couple of sentences, Si.
Okay. So I got to the point about talking about memory lapses, and that's been difficult to adjust to not having the mind that one is used to having, clarity of thinking, and ability to express thoughts as speech sometimes gets a bit mixed up, which can be quite frustrating, and my wife realizes that too.
Yeah. And is there anything else that's helped you to cope with your condition? I mean, for those who don't know, Simon is a good friend of mine, one of my oldest and dearest friends from Dunedin, and I was quite, heartbroken for him when he developed this condition. But to me, you seem to be coping so well. I couldn't imagine coping in with the same situation. But how do you manage to cope, Si?
Well, as Alistair mentioned, it's people see us generally at our best because it's when we've got energy and sort of a bit more enthusiastic, that we're out there socialising. And my wife's definitely seen me at my worst when I was actually suicidal about a year ago, before I started medication for Parkinson's, which I'll explain a little bit. Parkinson's is caused by a lack of neurons in the brain, or the death of some neurons that produce dopamine, which is a chemical that you need obviously for motivation and happiness, but also for movement. And so as a side effect of having less dopamine produced in your brain, you start to go on a bit of a depressive curve. And I was getting quite far down that before I reached the point of starting medication. So, yeah.
Al's got his hand up. He wants to make a comment. There you go, Al. Oh, no, yep. He's frozen.
Simon,
oh, no, there you go. Yep.
Simon, I don't know about you, but it was really, really difficult for me the choice to go on that medication. Like, I take citalopram, which helps me with my mood and anxiety and things, and I'm on a much smaller dose than I used to be able to, because I found other coping mechanisms, etc. But was that difficult for you? Like, it really exacerbates the depression. It's like, oh, I need to take these bloody pills to da 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 da. Did that really was that a factor for you?
Yeah, I held off as long as I could taking medication because I know there's side effects and you have to increase the dosage over many years, and that leads to further complications.
Yeah.
But if I didn't take it, I was getting to the point I wasn't motivated to get out of bed in the morning, and there's no point living at that point.
Very much the same,
So,
yeah. I think I
yeah.
probably could have took a little earlier, but as you said, you know, our cases are quite different. So I'm hoping I won't have to take more as I go along. But uh, yeah, and I think something to do with the production of what was it? What did you just call
Dopamine.
it there? Um, yeah, dopamine. That there's a correlation between my condition and that too. But
Mm.
I'm really glad. So yeah, thank you for the answer.
Thank you. It appears that we've lost Donna. Her screen did freeze before, and she's left. So hopefully she can get back on. If you are able to text her, Mari, just to see if she can try again, that would be great. Destin, if you would like to share with us what's been most difficult for you, or what is most difficult for you in life, coping with various conditions, and what helps you to cope.
Yeah, I think honestly what's been most difficult for me personally has been, well, amnesia is one thing. I think memory lapses is a huge difficulty for me because I have forgotten friends and they'll come up to me and they'll be like, "Hey, what's up?" And I'll be like, "I have no idea who you are." And that can be really embarrassing, especially when it's like a coworker and you're like, "I haven't met you yet. What's your name?" And they're like, "We met yesterday." And you're like, "Oh no." But again, on that point, like I haven't been able to work for the past, 8 months or so due to the chronic pain that just kind of gets worse throughout my life. And that coming up is really, really hard for me as I'm like a really active person. And so I'm like, oh, hopefully, this flare up goes away soon. But dealing with these flare ups and every single time you get another flare up, it gets worse. That's really scary for me. I'll faint in public. I'll have episodes of gastrointestinal like issues. Like it causes so many random different issues that just don't make any sense that it took me 21 years to get diagnosed. And I think it's really just hard putting it all together when you have like amnesia and all that. But like taking care of myself has just been hard, and it's just been difficult, like kind of accepting it, I guess, that I'm not able to, go on hikes with my dogs. I'm not I'm not able to like hang out with people as often. That's a really big thing for me. Like I'm not social, like I'm definitely introverted. But it's still like a huge thing when I don't have any friends because I moved to a new city and I'm disabled, so I can't get down my stairs when the elevator is broken. So I just kind of hang out up here so I don't make any friends. Yeah. That's been
So
really difficult.
it sounds very challenging, and especially at such a young age and having to deal with this your whole life. We have a question in the chat about, a few questions for you actually. Are there any day-to-day activities that really take a toll or are especially difficult? I guess you've mentioned about the stairs or if the elevator's not working. Any other day-to-day things?
Definitely just, I guess, like just generally functioning day to day is pretty hard for me. I am used to not to kind of just like ignoring the pain that I go through. And as someone who has multiple personalities, I have some that will feel pain more strongly than others. They have different pain tolerances. So, sometimes that can be helpful. Other times you'll get stuck with the one that feels the most pain. And that isn't fun. I don't really remember those parts of like of existing. I just know that they happen, and I know that during that period of time it's really, really unpleasant for like the body to go through that. And it's really difficult for me because I like am impacted by it, because if I don't take care of their body, then that person will have more pain when they come out, if that makes sense. So.
And how does POTS affect you? There's another question in the chat for you.
Ooh, POTS is really interesting. It doesn't cause as many like obvious problems for me, I guess. Like it's these problems that I overlooked for a long time, but I get very dizzy and I faint. Sometimes I get seizures, which is pretty scary. And it's basically like, I guess the blood doesn't pump correctly around the body. It's post-orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So when I stand up, my heart rate will go from 60 to 160 in a matter of seconds. I'll faint and I'll be like, oh, okay, that was weird. And that's really all it does most of the time. Sometimes it causes like gastrointestinal issues, and it can cause like temperature problems. Like I live in Los Angeles and I have to wear like warm sweaters all the time. Unless it's just a couple degrees more than I like it, and then it's too hot and I'll sweat like crazy. So
oh, that's a challenge. And in the US, has the health system there helped you? Has there been much support? Like Donna talked about receiving support here recently with this electric wheelchair and things. Have you had support in your health system?
The US is not great, especially when they know that you have a mental disability. When that is included, everything, every chronic pain illness, every kind of, even if it's diagnosed, it will be written off as, oh, well, it's not as bad as you really truly are experiencing it because you have anxiety, which doesn't really make sense. But I think that there's a lot of ableism even in the mental health care facilities, especially in the US healthcare system. And the government doesn't really seem to want to care about people like me that are in my position. And that's been really hard to adjust to, but I've managed to have a lot of friends and family who care about me, and GoFundMe is my insurance plan. So that's kind of just how the US works, I guess.
Yeah, I'm sorry that you're there and that the health system is a little bit dysfunctional, and yeah, that is sad, that people can be written off kind of from getting support they need because they may also have mental health issues. Speaking of mental health issues, before we talk to Nagisa, we do have someone on the call who's happy to share a few things that she finds difficult with mental health issues. Josie, thank you for volunteering. Josie just sent me a message in the chat to say that they'd be happy to speak. So over to you, Josie.
So one thing that I just want to say really quickly, I find it really interesting that young people, specifically in this context, Destin and I, both say lots of jokes and use humor to kind of cope with the sadness of things. We're giggling a lot in this as opposed to adults are slightly more serious, which I find interesting. But I find that, so I have depression and anxiety, had them since like 13 roughly, so kind of got written off a bit of just kind of being an angsty teen kind of thing. I would say that my depression isn't a stereotypical one. I say with 1.5 million quotation marks, because there is no such thing as a stereotypical depression. Lots of people can feel it differently. So I don't really go from, so I can use a line as an example. I don't go from kind of being really good to then really bad and then kind of back again. I am like a constant, not great really. So I don't have big kind of like stereotypical big meltdowns. I just find it hard to sometimes see goodness in life. And one of the aspects that I find really difficult is the memory issues that can come with depression, that I find kind of spiral with my depression, that I'll forget quite a lot of my life. I moved to England when I was about 9, and I don't really remember most of living in England, apart from things that people have told me. And then from things that happen, I tend to remember the bad things, which then spirals more and, just kind of makes everything worse. That was the little spiel. Yeah.
That's really interesting, and thank you for sharing that that with us, Josie. I've just had a message from Donna, who was on the panel before. She's contacted Mari, and because of her sound, and she wasn't hearing things properly, and so she's not able to resume joining us, which is a shame. But it was good to hear from her before. Nagisa, do you want to share what it's like as a carer or a spouse for someone who has undergone illness? And I can encourage anyone else who may have questions to type them in the chat for Josie or anybody else. Christine's just posted something in the chat for you, Josie, but it was lovely to hear a young person's point of view. So yeah, Nagisa, over to you for a bit.
Okay. I've never thought me as a carer.
Yeah.
Carer, because taking care of each other is normal thing as a couple, and mentally and physically, I think we are equally helping each other, and I don't feel like I'm really doing a lot for him. It's just a natural thing that I want to help. If I see him in trouble, doing something, and he seems taking too long time, then I will ask him if he wants my help or not. Because sometimes he just wants to challenge him, and that's good for him. But it's also really hard not to help too much, too soon, because sometimes when pills are kicked in and he's fine, he's fine. He can lift up the heavier things and run, but suddenly he just collapses, and then maybe he needs help. And just watching, and whenever he wants my help, I try to help him. And yeah, I feel it's really natural as a couple.
And his sorry.
Okay, communication. Actually, more than physical help, mental help is something I struggle with. Because when he's down, he's just down and can't have a normal communication. And I know it's not him; it's just the Parkinson's. When he can't communicate with me, and when he's having depression, he can't even hear me or think the normal way, and that's just the Parkinson's, not him. So just accepting and take time, and then he'll be him again. So thanks to the pill, actually, before the pill, before we start taking the medication, it was really, really hard because he couldn't get back to him. So I was lost. I didn't know how to help him. That was the hardest part. But forgetting things. We just have to laugh because we forget. Normally we forget, and it's just more often. That's all. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nagisa. That's really interesting. Now, I just have a question. We've got about 5 minutes left. It's gone really fast. And I'm wondering for all of you, what can other people do, to support you, or, what can we do that's helpful? So for you, Josie, for example, when you say you don't have these big swinging ups and downs, you're kind of quite a lot. Are there things that other people, your friends, your family, time bankers, what can we do that might be helpful, or what maybe what is not helpful if you've experienced that, but perhaps some suggestions, if you have any.
I mean, the biggest thing for me is just, I say understanding I don't necessarily know what's going on in my head at any time. Quite a lot of it is just, I feel sad and I don't know why. I can't explain it. One thing that my mum has just kind of gotten better at is if I say to her, like, I'm not feeling too great, she doesn't pry and trying to figure out what's wrong, because it's not always there's something wrong. And I wanted to add a thing I forgot, shockingly, with the memory thing. One of the biggest impacts it had was that in year 13, which is the final year of high school, I had an online course which required me to be self-motivating.
Not happening.
I don't think I did a single assignment for that class at all. And I kind of, at the end, I kind of told my teacher, so I've just been struggling. He was like, yeah, understandable. Could have asked for help and I would have been fine, but I'm like, yeah. Asking for help isn't always the easiest thing, and neither is receiving help.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment on something that people can do that is helpful for you? Yeah, Destin.
Yeah, I think if someone comes up to you about any kind of mental or physical health issue, I think really like the thing I found most to be helpful is if they try to understand from your perspective, and also sorry, I lost my train of thought. That just happens all the time. Give me a second. Basically just listening to someone and how they experience things and how they go through something is really important. Like, for example, when I told my friend that I have DID, they watched a bunch of videos on it and learned more about it, and that was really, really helpful for me, and for all of us, really internally, because it really helped validate what we were going through, and have someone take it a little more seriously than oh, I'm sorry, that doesn't help, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know how to respond to that because it's just my life, and I don't know why you would be sorry for me. I'm just living differently, and yeah, I'm in chronic pain and I have severe trauma, but it's kind of something I don't know, I hate hearing oh, I'm sorry, feel better. I guess that's something that has never been helpful, and I've always found it kind of oh, okay.
Someone has put in the chat for you, Destin, that something helpful that we could do to support you is perhaps donating to your GoFundMe.
Yes, I do. Yes, that's a good one too.
that you mentioned before. So if you can access chat, I know it's a little bit tricky while you're on a phone, but feel free to put in the name of your GoFundMe page in case anyone that's listening in does want to support you. I've got Christine on the chat has asked, this is for anyone. I have disabilities and would love to know how you cope with always trying to put on a brave face, especially when you are in a caring role, when actually you're having a shite day and are in lots of pain. I struggle to accept the challenges of my autoimmune things. So maybe Alistair, did you want to?
Yeah, I'm going to read the question again for a second. That's part of, it's hard to take stuff in. I suppose that's the end of the day. I'm tired. But I do very much have disabilities and would love to know. I suppose it depends on who the person you're caring for is, but I suppose just being really open with them and saying how you really feel, and that's not always easy to do. And then don't take it the wrong way when they don't understand. That's all I can really do. When you're actually having a shit day, yeah, and like I do tend to go around telling people, I'm not myself today. If I react to you in a manner which you wouldn't think to be normal for me, yeah, that's why. And like Destin says, I don't really want pity, although I've never really thought about it that way. But yeah, and I also think on Destin's topic, it's really difficult not to feel compassionate towards someone, but it's our societal way to say, oh, I'm so sorry about that or whatever, because people just don't know what to say because it's so awkward, you know. And I think one of the things I've learned, well, there's two things that I've really felt very helpful with, is finding other people like you, all, and talking to each other and comparing notes and, you know, what's helped you here, what's helped me there. I remember before I met any of you in the TimeBank, I came across a lady in America who had a really, really bad car accident, was hit by a drunk driver, and she's got her ankles fused, and she's had operations she was in bed in hospital for a year and rah, rah, rah. And she's a farmer. She still does a little bit of farming. She still has to have operations, and she's just so amazingly positive, and the things she does and the way she does things, you know, so getting to know other people who have, I think I've probably gone off topic of the question, but getting to know other people who have, thanks for laughing, Josie, because I know I'd laugh at you. Yeah, getting to know people like Josie, honestly, like Josie makes me laugh every time we meet, and I'm just, you know, a 43-year-old child generally, but yeah, what do we see? Yeah, so the whole pain thing, I do tend to isolate myself when I'm having a shitty day. And, you know, when I was really bad and very depressed, I'd cook dinner and I would just get super, super angry when I was going through my, you know, stages of depression. And I wouldn't know, like I'd be almost finished cooking dinner and I'd just snap and I'd feel so angry I wanted to kill someone or break something. So I'd just hop in the car and go for a drive and try not to crash into a big a concrete post or something, because that's all I wanted to do, you know, was to end it. And I'm sure you've all sort of been around that sort of thing. But yeah, you try and isolate yourself and just say, look, I'm having a shitty day, and I tend to just go to bed. I actually had a question there, or a thought for Simon, if you don't mind, Kate. And what was it again? Yeah, it's such a lonely place when you're sort of, it almost feels like locked in your own body. And, you know, you can't explain to, well, I can't explain to my wife, and you maybe can't explain to Nagisha how you are feeling. And you don't even know yourself where you're at. You're just so in limbo of this or that, or you're getting used to a new pain, and it's so lonely, you know. How did you cope, or how are you coping with sort of getting through that period, or that time? Because it sounds like you've gone through it reasonably recently, if you don't mind my asking.
Yeah, I haven't felt lonely. I think it sounds like you're a lot more people person than I am naturally.
True.
And I've always felt supported by my wife when I do need something, some word of encouragement or something like this. Yeah, I've kind of lost half of your question, but I don't know if that answers it.
Yeah, I lost the plot that much that it was really difficult for Shelley to know what to say to me. And so I remember, you know, afterwards saying to her, you know, why didn't you talk to me the way you used to? And she said, well, you were so erratic that I didn't know what to say. No matter what I said, it wasn't, you know, it wasn't helping. So she just tried to get on with her, whatever she needed to do, you know, because she had to take a lot of weight. We weren't sure about financially and all those things at the start. So until things started to level off, it really took a massive toll on her. But yeah, so, and I'm just after you were introduced and you started talking, I remember meeting you at Kate's. So hi.
Yeah.
Now, I am aware it's just gone after 8, and so some of our people listening in may, I think one person's actually just disappeared, and I am aware that it is now 1 a.m. in California, so we don't want to hold Destin up too much longer. But for those who are able and willing to stay on the call for a little longer, you know, I'm thinking maybe 10 minutes. That would be wonderful. We can just take a couple of last questions. Thanks for putting your GoFundMe thing in there, Destin. Was just coming back to the question about what can we do that might be helpful? What can other people do? Did anyone else have thoughts about that? I didn't ask you all. Yeah, Simon.
I think curiosity is a really good thing to have from other people, and they need to know our limitations and what our disabilities are. And we've just experienced the lockdown with a good old friend, and I had to keep working out that he didn't know what I couldn't do anymore, and I'd keep on offending him, or he'd get impatient because he didn't realize that there's these limitations now. For example, just simply walking across a room with a cup of coffee in one hand, the multitasking ability has gone to about 10% of what it is for the normal people. So I can't actually hear what people are saying to me when I'm doing that. It requires so much concentration to walk across balancing a cup of coffee in one hand. So he would get upset because I wasn't talking to me. This sort of little thing, that it's good to tell people what your limitations are, so that you know you don't upset them.
Yeah, and also between us, even I don't know, and every day when he gets the point that the limited, the limits.
Like Alistair was saying, it just sometimes it creeps up on you, and bang, you're in this space where you just don't work the same way anymore.
Yeah, we are like communicating and talking and responding, and then 1 second he just stopped doing it. Like, did you hear me? And then not responding at all. And then we have a word that he can say, which is Alice in the Wonderland. So don't talk to me now. I can't understand anything what you're saying, kind of word. Then I know he's not capable now. So
like a code word to help you explain the situation.
I can get one word out, that's it, and then I shut down.
Yeah, shut down so I can wait. So it's really helpful to know what's happening. It's hard to just look and notice. So yeah, that's one way of.
But it's hard to know who to mention these things to initially. For example, I've had some job interviews in the last few weeks, and I don't know what point to say that I have this disability that could affect my ability to lift computers or to walk around an office fixing computers or something like this. You don't want to say it too soon because you never get a job. And then just people you might, not strangers, but acquaintances that you might bump into and talk about doing something with, and they should know a little bit that you can't necessarily go for a half an hour walk or something.
Thank you. Great. I think we might have lost Destin. Destin decided that it was time for a sleep. Fair enough. That's great. I found this really interesting. Josie, go ahead.
I just wanted to add a thing that so Destin also has a YouTube channel where they talk quite a lot more about their dissociative identity disorder, where they use I think it's a really nice metaphor in regards to how the alters works, because I didn't really explain that too much. I don't know whether I'll say it, because I think it's interesting. It helps understand it a lot more than, because they used quite a lot of the kind of in lingo to do with alters. So they it's a trauma-based thing. That basically, when you're younger, you have different personalities that, as you kind of grow up, will kind of merge to make the you that is you. But if you experience a trauma during that time, they don't all necessarily mush together. So they basically, the analogy they used was that when they are themselves, so when Destin is being Destin, they are essentially, if the body is a car, they are driving the car. But then a passenger might arrive, and then that person can start giving advice on driving, saying, oh, maybe this, but then that person can also take over driving and lots of things, which is when the dissociation kind of starts and the fuzziness and not remembering things because they're no longer driving the car. If that, I thought that's a helpful thing.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, there's so many things out there. I don't know how people manage all of you with the various physical and mental things that you're coping with. That's complex, but that's helped explain that. Thank you, Josie, somewhat. Yeah, given us a good metaphor. Yeah, thank you for sharing. All right, team, I think we will wrap up. I'm just going to bring those of you who are still there, who've had your video off so we could just see our panelists, feel free to come back by just clicking start video. We can see you. And we can just see who else has been on the call. Thanks, nice to see you. Did any of you have any final comments, any of our panelists or any of those who've been listening in who are still on the call? Anyone want to have a comment? Just before you do, I have been recording this call and I will double check with all our panelists at the conclusion if you are happy for me to share or to make it publicly viewable. For example, Margaret, who was hoping to be on the call, who's in hospital, I think she would really enjoy watching it. I think this could be a really powerful resource and really interesting for many people, who maybe maybe their friend or their spouse or, their colleague has a similar condition, and this might just help them understand it. So if you're open to letting it be public, that's an option, and you can let me know after I stop recording and just to let our panelists know as well. So now you'll be seen on that video, and if you've got any comments, feel free to make them now. Otherwise we'll round off. Yeah. And just unmute yourself first. Yeah, Mari.
I'm just interested. I remember in the initial email that Kate sent out, and obviously we haven't got time to get to everything, but one thing that interested me was the question along the lines of, what is it that able-bodied people do that when you've got any kind of disability you just wish we wouldn't do? Is there anything?
I guess they've covered it a little bit in what we could be doing. So asking questions and just accepting when people say that they're having a shit day, that okay, that's how it is, and not necessarily to probe. I guess some of those things were kind of covered in the reverse way of asking that question. Christine suggested that that maybe a panel for carers or partners or might be interesting all in its own, and certainly your contribution, Nagisa, has been really valuable tonight, so thanks for sharing your perspective on that. Elna, did you have any comments?
Yes, it was really interesting to hear about especially the Parkinson's one, because I was always just under the impression you just shake and that's all it was all about. But now to discover that you actually lose your memory, this was something that I didn't know. And but thank you all for everybody that shared, and it was really, really enlightening to us. Thanks.
Thank you, Elna. And Roberta, did you have any questions or comments, or you're good?
Just unmute myself. Thank you everyone for sharing. It was it's really interesting and helpful, and just nice to hear what everyone goes through and understand that often people are going through something that just because we can't physically see it, doesn't mean it's not there. So thank you for sharing, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you. Great. I think we'll leave it on that note, unless anyone was desperate to say something else. Okay, I will stop the recording.